All right, so we are joined from Richmond, Virginia, by the one and only Jim Hill, class of 2017 graduate, Marshawn Grady, also graduate of Jackson State University. He took a interesting route, which is different that we want our kids to hear about. I've got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High School. We're also joined by Kiera Drain's class down the hall, and we're recording this for all of our juniors and seniors here at Velma Jackson High School, and for our friends at Madison Central, Ridgeland, and Germantown, the Academic Options Center, and our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for joining us. And I think it's important to note that you were in one of my first ever classes as a teacher at Jim Hill High School when you were in ninth grade.
I
And
sure
now you've
was,
gotten
sure.
all the way to Richmond, Virginia. So before we go to your college path and your current situation, talk about your experience in high school, because it's a little bit different than others going to Jackson Public Schools, but you got involved in a lot of great things, which led you to go to Jackson State.
Right. So originally, when I attended Jim Hill, I was more of a quiet student. Really didn't do much student body wise until like my senior year. I was in JROTC, and that kind of had a major impact on my career now. But before that, like I said, I was just a regular student going to class, doing my homework, participating here and there in little activities or whatnot. But overall, wasn't really involved like I should have until I got up to my junior and senior year, to where I was a little bit more comfortable, made a lot more friends, a little bit more involved in school. I believe my senior year, I was the senior class historian and had to um, participate and communicate with my classmates on different things and the senior body class cabinet, trying to get our things done for graduation and stuff like that. So starting there, I wasn't doing too much until uh, of those last 2 years. But the major factor of my life journey was JROTC.
Yeah, and you were also involved in TSA at the Career Center there in Jackson Public Schools.
I was. I forgot about that. I was a part of TSA at the Career Development Center. It's been like 5 years. I forgot. um, and I was taking a class called Simulation and Animation Design. I have a certificate in that. Um, and I was a part of TSA competition. We went to state, and then we ended up placing on our presentation that we had.
Yeah, that simulation animation program is also in Madison County. So I would encourage anybody to look into that. It's a great skill to have.
Most
Now,
definitely.
one thing, I've got to talk about it is that even though you weren't involved in a lot of the crazy stuff, you were exposed to a lot of stuff being in Jackson Public Schools at Jim Hill. Now, I don't want people to think it wasn't dangerous or anything, but you were, first of all, it was so many people. I mean, it's such a big school. And then the atmosphere and the climate of the inner city is completely different to where we have here in the county. Um, we have resources that Jackson wouldn't dream of having. This would not have happened in our class at Jackson Public Schools. So, talk a little bit about. I mean, it's hard enough to be a minority in this country. So, talk a little bit about the things that you had to work through, because I always tell these kids they don't know how good they have it. And you're obviously a great example that somebody that's done well coming out of Jim Hill. So talk a little bit about some of the things you had to go through being a student in Jackson.
Well, one, growing up in Jackson, I went to elementary school. I was in Isabel, which is a little school right beside Jim Hill. Isabel, Blackburn, then to Jim Hill. And being in Jackson most of my life, it was kind of troubling because I was always thankfully, I was in a financially stable household, but couldn't necessarily get everything that I needed on certain ends. And so I had to, and being from a family where my own mom and others in my family didn't even make it out of high school, it was kind of a challenge for myself to have someone to fall back on who doesn't know the full the full game because they never completed it. Um, and so that was one struggle. Another struggle I would say is being that in that school you have so many different people and personalities and different learning methods and all this type of stuff. I think at the time, um, around the time that's when Common Core was being introduced, and um, I did not like it at all. It for me it was a little bit more challenging because not every kid learns the same way, and so having to sit down and learn how to do this way when you know you can get the same result a different way, but it's still wrong if you don't do it this way. It was kind of challenging, so you had to adjust and adapt to those different situations. But overall, I'll say the challenges of being in the JPS system is really hard, especially like lack of funding and teachers and things like that, when you don't have the proper educational background for your students themselves to grow in. It's kind of hard for them to develop and to be successful in this modern day world when they don't have um, those pillars in their life to support them. So they have to almost kind of create those pillars.
Yeah, and just and the gang activity that's nearby, it's so easy to get pulled into.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's a trap that a lot of kids have fallen into. But at the same time, there's also the opportunities that you took, and you went to Jackson State University. So, talk a little bit about your HBCU experience, your Jackson State University, and while you were there, you did ROTC, and that was a great benefit for you as well to do it on the college level. So, talk a little bit about that because I've really enjoyed following it.
So, well, I'll start from my senior year. After I was in JRTC in high school, I was heavily involved in that. I was one of the top cadets, and I ended up getting a RTC scholarship to Alcorn State University down in Lorman first. And so that's where I attended for 3 years. Loved it down there. Made a lot of good friends. Made a good status for myself. Developed, but it was the end of my junior year to where academically and some other things I wasn't doing too well. So I decided to, instead of staying in the situation where I may or may not succeed, I went ahead and just removed myself and just transferred over to Jackson State. And from Jackson State, I continued into the RTC program as well under the direction of what's his name, Lieutenant Colonel Robinson. Yeah, and that he at first didn't want to accept me into the program because of some reviews that I received, but later ended up accepting me um, into the program to where I became again another good cadet. Um, Stayed in, I believe, a semester and a half. I graduated this past spring from Jackson State, and what else? I also commissioned into the United States National Guard, well, Army National Guard, in the state of Mississippi as a second lieutenant. But I ended up, moving over to Virginia.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about that because I don't think a lot of these kids understand how that works. Because first of all, you can not have anything military based as a major and still be a part of a ROTC program and get great scholarship money, great military benefits, and like you said, commissioned into a branch of the armed forces. So talk a little bit about why you did that and how that works because we haven't really had anybody talk about that.
Well, for one thing I'll start on stigma wise is a lot of people when they hear the army or military in general, they think war and being away from home and bullets and guns and tanks and all that good stuff. And it's not that. It's not that, but yes, that is a part of it, but it is not totally that. Um, for me, not having, I had like one military personnel in my family, but he didn't have really much of an impact. Um, but the things and the benefits that the military ROTC can offer you, while simultaneously majoring in something else. I had a bachelor of science in biology doing ROTC at the same time, and if you play, I ain't gonna say play the game right. If you do what you have to do, the Army will pay for you to go to school. ROTC will pay for you to go to school. Um, and all you have to do is just serve. That's it. You can be anything in the army. I was told like this to better understand the army. Any civilian job that they have it in the army. If you want to be a cook, they have it in the army. If you want to be a pilot, they have it in the army. If you want to be a doctor, they have it in the army. Whatever it may be, a lawyer, whatever. They have those jobs in the military. You're just serving your country simultaneously. And so, being on that ROTC scholarship, all I had to pay for was housing. Um, and honestly, if I had a big enough scholarship, I probably didn't have to pay for that. But the military will offer you those benefits that you need if you can't get like an academic scholarship or an athletic scholarship or whatever. RTC might just be your best bet, and it's not demanding. You just have to be disciplined enough to make sure you get those things that you need. I know RTC it can be a little bit challenging physically, being that you have to get up and do PT and stay late and do these different assignments and stuff like that, or go to these different trainings and um, sleep out in the woods here or do something like that. So yeah, I know that's not. It doesn't sound uh, like milk and ice cream, but I promise you, it's not as bad as it seems. It's actually pretty fun. So it has a lot of benefits that I would encourage some of you to take heed of. Um, and if you cannot do ROTC, another thing that a lot of friends of mine have done is that they've graduated from high school and gone on and enlisted. And once they enlisted, then they went to college so that the general military would pay for their tuition.
Yep.
So that's an option as well.
Yeah, and just to clarify, what is your MOS in the Army? So what is the job you train for?
So I right now am a transportation officer, but I am getting a new LOA and I'll be an ordnance officer. It's basically logistics. But right now for transportation, I'm just over 88 mics, which are transportation drivers, fuelers, and things like that, who just drive trucks and get them to point A to point B. And I make sure they get to point A to point B, make sure they're up to date and things like that. That's pretty much my job title for now. But
Yeah,
one thing,
yeah, they don't understand. There's a lot of materials and a lot of people that have to be moved all the time. So you got to have people. You got to have professionals in the military to be able to do that.
right, and they're not driving like regular cars and vans. They're driving like borderline 18 wheelers, these giant automobiles with these huge wheels. Yeah, they have to be licensed professionals.
That's awesome. And another thing, that I've always said, and I agree. The Army or any military branch is not just kick down doors, blow stuff up, and shoot them up like the movies. Um, the technology training in the military is second to none in the world. And a lot of these technical jobs, you could go to the military, get the training, get paid to get to train, even if you're enlisted, and you could have a six-figure tech job without ever stepping foot on a college campus, if that's something you wanted to do, just because the military has access to state-of-the-art technology that maybe some companies don't.
That is very true. A lot of I have a lot of friends who enlisted and they did different things. They became fuelers, tankers, um, cybersecurity agents, this and the third, all these different things by not even going to college. They just did this stuff. And the thing is, the Army has different trades and stuff that regular school doesn't offer anymore: plumbing, electricity, roofing, all these different things that you can learn and have these skill sets in. So when you get out of the Army, you'll have the experience to where you can find a job easily or enter into this field with no problem because you have that history to back it up. So the Army does teach a lot of those trades and specialties that regular life does not teach anymore. And a lot of my friends have taken that route.
Yeah, and then that doesn't mean you can't go to college because the GI
Right.
Bill, and then you're able to, even do online school while you're active duty. So
Right.
I don't want these young people to think, oh, if I go to the military, I can't go to college. That's not true.
Right.
It is. I mean, it may be later, but for example, my uncle was in the Navy. While he was active in the Navy, he went to medical school and became a doctor. Didn't pay a dime for it. So that's always an option. So I think it's a misnomer that if you go enlisted, you can't go to college. That's not true.
And one of the biggest misconceptions about military and school is the information of how it's communicated to different people. All you have to do is find the right person to talk to. Because a lot of people, I don't want to like shame or bash recruiters or things like that, but some of them only give you partial information to benefit themselves.
Yep.
Um, but if you find a genuine recruiter or a genuine military personnel person, regardless, they can lead you in the right direction of what you need and the steps you need to take in order to have the max benefits out of the military.
Yep. And then, and another, and you talk about benefits, that made me think, even if you just do a few years, you'll have access to those military benefits the rest of your life,
Yeah.
which can, be great as far as retirement and great as far as health insurance. And you have access to the VA. So there's a lot of long-term benefits, as well as someone gets older, even if they just serve for a short time.
Yeah, this is true. I know right now, I think the military has a thing called TRICARE. It covers, vision, dental, health, and all the good stuff. Um, and the Army, they will take care of you, medical wise.
Absolutely.
They will take care of you. They will provide everything that you need in order for you to succeed. The benefits are amazing. The GI bills, the retirement plans, the 401ks, whatever it may have you. Uncle Sam will make sure you have what you need while you're in the Army.
Absolutely. Now, before we get into what you're doing now, just talk briefly about your HBCU experience because we have our kids looking at different schools. But I think it's important to find the best fit for them, whether it's PWI, community college, or HBCU. So, talk a little bit about you've been to two HBCUs. So, talk about what makes an HBCU stand out when somebody's trying to make that college choice.
That's a good one. My initial thought process when I graduated, I was going to go to the school called Gustavos at first, but um, I ended up going to Alcorn because I got that scholarship, and I can say the HBCU experience is second to none. It is a culture and an environment and an atmosphere that you really cannot get anywhere else. From the people you meet, from the things you attend, from the classes you go to. And at HBCUs, they're not as big as PWIs. And a lot of people say um, the teachers know you by your name and not just a number. And I didn't understand it till I got to college because I heard it a lot when I was in high school. Um, but what they mean by that is at a PWI, not to shame them or anything like that, but at a PWI, they are larger institutions. And so you would have a huge number of students in that class, like on average, like two to maybe even 400, depending on the class and the size and stuff like that. And you will sit in these giant auditoriums where the professor is just teaching and y'all go. Rather, a HBCU, where it can be also as large, but not really. I'll say a class max like 50 people maybe, where the professor is able to learn your name and able to make sure you get the information, and you can email them and meet them in the office hours and things like that, to make sure, hey, I need help with this, or I didn't understand this. Could you explain this? Things like that. Rather, being in a class of 400 where your teacher is getting emails and they may or may not have seen it.
Yep.
But that's just like the tip of the iceberg for HBCUs. Now the culture from I can't say food because I don't know what PWI food is like, but the food is good. I know like at Jackson State and at Alcorn we had fried chicken Wednesdays. I love me some chicken. So they have fried chicken Wednesdays every Wednesday, catfish Fridays. And they would have like DJs in the cafeteria, so it wouldn't be so bland. And like if you didn't know anybody and you sat down in the cafeteria, you just sitting there eating in silence. No, they're gonna have a DJ. They're gonna have music playing in the overhead speakers, something to liven the mood to make it feel like home. Um, from the events that they host to the different organizations that you can join. I'm also a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, and the things that you can do, you can't get that anywhere else. And so I would say that HBCU experience is critical and also developing your characteristics and your personality as a person, because the people you're going to meet are going to mold you into someone you're going to be in the future. And you have to make sure you surround yourselves with the right people, because if you get the wrong people to pour into you, it's not going to be good.
Yeah, and I forgot you were Phi Beta Sigma. Just real briefly, because we have a few teachers that are Zetas. I know the kids see the stepping and the strolling and all that, and all that's really cool and really fun. But there's so much more to it than that. The NPHC organizations do so much for the community. So just talk real briefly about that.
So the NPHC itself was there were 9 orgs. They're all founded at different times within the 1900s, um, and they were made to support and defend the Black community in times of need. Over the years, they're still doing that, but there are also some additives that have been added along the way, such as the stepping and the strolling. These things have always been there, but they're more predominant now. Stepping, strolling, and the cadence calling, all these different things. But being a member of Phi Beta Sigma, one of the things as a fraternity member, what we do in the community can lead from mentoring young men and women, specifically men, because you have sororities who would deal with the ladies, but mentoring, voting rights. I know yesterday there were posts and all types of things of people going to the polls, making sure you go out to vote, make sure you have everything you need for voters registration. If you don't, making the community better and safer. all these different things, donating to different causes. It's definitely not just about that stepping and strolling. That's just temporary because once you graduate from undergrad, you don't do that anymore.
Or if you get too old, your body can't do it anymore.
Or,
Because I
or that you get
plenty
too
of
old,
people in
you
the
can't even
future
move.
trying to do it.
So it is definitely strictly about
Yeah.
that community service and that involvement around your community.
Yeah. Now, obviously, we got to talk about what you're doing now. You just moved to Richmond, Virginia, which is kind of cool for somebody from Jackson, Mississippi. So tell us about what you're doing and what brought you to the East Coast.
So what happened? It's really a crazy story. So I was applying to multiple jobs. I had just graduated. I was working at the Boys and Girls Club over off of Capitol Street in Jackson, just helping out, mentoring kids and teaching them and things like that. Just trying to make them better citizens. Um, when I was applying to, I don't know how many different jobs, because that wasn't the main career path I wanted to take. I knew I wanted to be in the medical field. I just didn't know how I was going to do it. Um, and so I started applying to all these different jobs and kept getting denied left and right, losing faith and patience and getting weary. But I ended up applying to a job. Well, no, actually, this job reached out to me via handshake. And I would recommend this now, being juniors and seniors, go ahead and make you what is known as a handshake account. And
Okay.
this thing you can build kind of like a criteria for yourself.
Wow.
Uh, and what will happen is when you put all your stuff down on there, and different companies and people and representatives from these organizations will reach out to you
That's
saying,
all.
"Hey, I saw you're this, I saw you're that, I like this, I like that. I recommend you applying for this. We have this position open. I think you'll be a good fit for this." And that's what ended up happening with this job. I work for a company called PPD, and they're by Thermo Fisher Scientific, and it's a clinical research group. And they reached out to me via handshake and said, "Hey, Sean, I saw you majored in biology. Um, we have this position available. We think you'll be a good fit for it. Hey, go ahead and apply, blah, say, blah, say." And so I applied, did a couple interviews, did the application process, all the good stuff, and I ended up getting the position. The only difficulty was me moving here. So going from Mississippi to Virginia, that's a 14-hour drive. So luckily ended up saving, had some extra help along the way, ended up getting, the place to stay, all the good stuff, and I started a job. So basically my job consists of me doing laboratory work. My official job title is me being called an assistant scientist.
Wow.
But um my what I do is I'm an analyst. So we have different what we call clients, like CDC, the FDA, Pfizer, Moderna, all these different people
Wow.
who we do run tests and research on for different things, whether that may it'll go from MMRV to measles, mumps, rubella, all those things, COVID, the HIV, pneumonia, what flu, whatever it is. We work with these different things, and we run assays and stuff like that to produce results to the clients to try to eventually come up with a vaccine for these illnesses.
That's incredible. I think it's a little bit, even though Jackson's not a small town, it's a little bit different living in a major city like Richmond. It's a big adjustment, and it's a lot. It's wait till winter; it's going to snow like crazy.
Yeah, it's cold now, and it's like 60 degrees, and it's pretty cold.
All right. Well, I do have a few questions from the students I want to get to, and
Okay.
these are all juniors. The first one is Roger Harris, and he asked, "When you were in college, what was your biggest motivation?"
Ooh, what was my biggest motivation? Probably wanting to graduate and making sure that my great grandmother sees it, which she did gratefully.
Oh, awesome.
She's still living, but that was like my main motivation. Because once you're in college, it gets hard. Like especially if you have a difficult major, and if you're taking those classes that are just like really weighing you down, and you don't have that self motivation, you have to get it from somewhere. Even if you're not able to encourage yourself, you have to have the right. That's why I said surround yourself with the right group of friends. Because if you can't encourage yourself, they'll do it for you.
Absolutely. Now, this is Alexander Williams. This is a great question. He asked, "When you were in college, did you have a plan B?"
Mm. Actually, yes, I did. So there were many a times me taking these difficult classes where I was like, "Nah, I can't do this. I'm gonna throw in the towel." And so me being in ROTC, the military was my initial route. I was just gonna, call it quits and go ahead and enlist. And that way I'll be active duty army. So that way I'm not worried about
Yeah.
my life choices because I know everything I need is taken care of once I finish basic training.
Yeah. And that's a great point, is that, even if if you're having, industry that's thin on jobs, if you are in the military, you're going to have a guaranteed job. And then so that's a great point for a lot of them to think about. Now, this is an interesting question about the military. This is Deshauna Woodard. And she asked, even if you are a cook in the Army, are you still going to be trained in combat?
Yes. So this is what they tell us. No matter your job in the army, you are a rifleman first. What that means is when you go to basic training, you're training to become a marksman and things like that. Make sure you know how to properly yield a weapon, and shoot a target from a far distance and do whatever you need to do in a combat situation. Now, that does not mean if we were to go to war right now that I'm picking up and I'm going to war. No, there are specific jobs and MOSs that do that. Now, if we were to lose or start losing, then that's when things would pick up and they'll start um, getting those other service members who aren't like infantry and armor and all those different things.
Yeah, and I had a friend that was in Iraq, and she did payroll in the Army. She literally sat at a desk and made sure everybody was paid. That's all she did. But the base got attacked, and she had an M16 by her desk, and she started shooting out the window. And she said, I wasn't infantry, but it was going to be me or them."
Exactly. That's another thing. Oh, when a lot of people hear deployment, they get scared. Deployment is, and I guarantee not to hear this from my mouth now. Deployment is nowhere near scary or bad. Now, there are different areas that can seem a little uneasy, like Afghanistan, things like that. But you could also deploy to places like Germany, Kuwait, Europe, France. It don't matter, like South Korea, all these different places, and you're getting paid extra one to be over there. Your money is tax free because you're not in the U.S. You're just it's saving it because you're not paying for anything except for like if you do something on the weekend. You're just accruing money while you're over there, and you're not in a combat zone. Like before I transferred from Mississippi to here, my unit was getting ready to deploy to Kuwait in May. Um, and Kuwait is a non-tactical zone, so you're just there. Like the army just occupies a lot of spaces in different countries. So that's what deploying means. That means the group that's over there now, they're coming home, but we need somebody else to occupy that space. So we're going to send y'all over there for a little bit. And then once y'all done, it's like a cycle, a rotation.
Yeah, it's not just, it's not like the movies. I think that, I mean, I like the combat movies too, but that's just such a small percentage of what the military does. I just got one more from the students. This is Joe Archie, and he asked, "Did you ever consider another branch of the military?"
Yes, Air Force. Yes, and I'm still considering it. The reason being, different branches do different things. The Army is the Army Marines are what they call foot soldiers. So y'all are firsthand. Y'all are the ones who do the groundwork. Navy, of course, they deal with things in the water, on seas. Air Force, obviously, things in the sky. But the Air Force has it a little bit more laxed because everybody's not flying a plane in the Air Force.
And actually, very few of them are flying a plane. That's a
Right.
big misnomer. That is
Yeah.
more technology based than anything.
Yeah. And plus, you have to have the right credentials to fly a plane. Like right now, I can't fly a plane because I wear glasses.
Yeah.
You have to have proper 20/20 vision. But the Army does offer things like LASIK surgery where you can get 20/20 vision, but that's
Wow.
another conversation. Um, but yeah, you in order to be a aviator or a pilot or whatever it may be, you have to have the right credentials. They're just not letting anybody fly planes.
Yeah. And in the Air Force, they're always looking for mechanics because of the high tech equipment they're dealing with, and they need more technology people probably than any other branch
Yeah,
because of all the radar, and they need meteorologists, they need the IT people, and we actually have a couple of alumni that are in the Air Force. That one of them's on a mission right now. I think he's actually in Kuwait, and he's a computer guy. He doesn't fly the planes. He's a computer guy. So that's a great point. Now we're almost out of time, but I got two questions for you before we
okay.
go. One funny and one serious. Um, now, you know, I always joke that we started high school together because that was my first year as a teacher. It was the first year as a high school student. And you were sitting just where everybody else was sitting at one point in your life when you were 14, 15 years old. But can you honestly say that all the things that I told you in life that were going to happen actually happened?
Yes, I can almost 100% guarantee that the information that comes out of Mr. Pikett's mouth is accurate. It is very beneficial if you take heed of it because, and one thing a lot of what I like to call seasoned adults, they hold more wisdom and information than we do. I'm only 23. Mr. Pikett's older than me. He still has way more experience and information to share now that I'm in different stages. But the information that he gave me was something that I needed at the time. So listen to what he has to say because it is beneficial because he and a lot of other teachers are a reason to where I am today.
Well, and I appreciate that. And it's never been about me, but I just, just super proud to call you a former student. Um, uh, but before we go, you are not much older than the kids that we have watching now. You're not far removed in age. You're from the same area, same state. You grew up as a black kid in Mississippi, just like they are. But yet, you're on the East Coast doing big things. Dream career, serving our country. So, what can they do, no matter what their path is, to follow in your footsteps of somebody to be just as successful coming from similar circumstances?
Um, I'll say these couple of things. One, be patient. Um, a lot of the time we can get so antsy and so eager that we end up messing up our own plans because we're not patient enough to realize and understand that some things take time.
Yep.
Um, Another thing I would say is, oh, we gotta hurry up. They have a meeting in here. Another thing is, I would say, um, not because I don't know everybody's religion, but I would say trust God, but also trust in yourself, trust your gut.
That's
So I'll leave. Those are my two best things I can leave you. Trust yourself and be patient.
That's awesome. Well, I'm so proud to call you a former student. I'm so proud to see everything you're doing and just the best is yet to come. So, Marshawn Grady, all the way from Richmond, Virginia. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you all so much.
I see you soon,
All
my guy.
right.